The lights are warm, the couch is famous, and the laughter always sounds effortless. But behind the velvet curtains of late-night television, there's a truth few ever see. At 62, after thousands of interviews and millions of smiles, Graham Norton finally let something slip. Not a joke, not a wink to the camera, a pause. And in that pause lived 6 names he never forgot, for all the wrong reasons. Names that surprised people, names that made fans lean in closer and ask, what really happens when the cameras are rolling? Picture the studio moments before airtime. The audience hums with anticipation, cue cards are stacked, makeup lights glow. Graham sits quietly, composed, professional. He's built a career on making the uncomfortable look fun, but not every guest meets him halfway. Over the years, he's admitted that some didn't just challenge him, they stayed with him. One of those names was Mark Wahlberg. Graham later described the night as chaotic, not in a fun way, but in a way that made control slip through his fingers. The stories rambled. The energy veered off course. Laughter came late and uneven. Graham did what he always does, kept the show moving, but afterward, he admitted it felt like trying to steer a car on ice. How do you recover when the rhythm is gone before the conversation even begins? Another name was Kim Kardashian. The expectation was massive. The moment was cultural, but the interview felt like pulling teeth. Short answers, little engagement. Graham reached again and again, tossing out humor like lifelines. Later, he reflected on how difficult it can be when someone famous for being watched doesn't want to talk. Was it nerves, disinterest, or two worlds colliding with nothing to bridge them? Then there was Madonna, a legend, an icon, someone you expect to dominate the room, but one appearance left Graham visibly strained. She arrived late. The energy shifted. The carefully planned flow cracked. Graham smiled, joked, adapted, but years later, he admitted it was one of those nights where professionalism outweighed enjoyment. When someone that powerful walks in, who really controls the room? Another name he's alluded to is Donald Trump. Long before politics reshaped his image. At the time, he was a celebrity businessman, larger than life, but dismissive. Graham recalled, the interaction is uncomfortable, marked by arrogance and an unwillingness to engage. It wasn't explosive. It was colder than that. And sometimes, cold is harder to play off than heat. Boy George is another name Graham has mentioned with honesty. The interview was tense, defensive, emotionally charged. Stories drifted into bitterness. Graham tried to lighten the mood, but some wounds don't want humor, they want space. The audience sensed it. The laughter didn't land. And afterward, Graham admitted some conversations leave a weight behind. Even when you do everything right, the last name is the most revealing. Russell Brand. Not because of rudeness, but because of dominance. Words poured out non-stop. Tangents multiplied. The couch felt crowded by one voice. Graham later acknowledged how exhausting it can be when a guest turns an interview into a performance within a performance. Where does a host go when there's no room to breathe? When Graham finally spoke about these guests, it wasn't with malice. It was with reflection. He never called them villains. He never claimed they were bad people. He simply admitted that chemistry isn't guaranteed, even for professionals. That some nights are harder than others. That smiling through discomfort is part of the job. But it leaves a mark. He's also admitted something deeper. That sometimes the problem isn't them, sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's pressure, sometimes it's two personalities that will never quite sync, and sometimes, years later, you look back and wonder if you could have done more. As the studio lights dim and the audience files out, Graham often lingers. He looks at the empty couch where legends, icons, and headaches once sat. Those 6 names don't echo as grudges, they echo as reminders. That even in a room built for laughter, tension can hide in plain sight. And the real question isn't who he couldn't stand, but how many moments in our own lives do we smile through, only to understand them years later, when the noise finally fades,